Hi, Travis with Splunk here. In another video, I used scripted inputs to bring in SNMP data to show off different ways of getting data into Splunk. I've been playing around with the scripted inputs and SNMP request using the SNMP walk, the get, and table command. And here I've got a chart that shows my interfaces, and I'm using the SNMP table request to bring in the interface data so I can visualize it. And I did have a problem last night around 08 or so where I lost internet at my house, and I am testing a radio. So I contacted the ISP, internet service provider, and said, "Hey, I lost internet." And after some troubleshooting, they got back with me and said that a router needed to be restarted, and you can see when they fixed the problem. And I'm also, running a speed test, so that's where you see a lot of that activity. If I come up here and go to maybe 60 minutes and come back down to this visualization, you can see every 15 minutes I am doing a speed test. And my internet service provider, they're gathering this data. I send it to them to, help them understand how this new radio is working. So what I want to do in this video is actually cover how I won't go in too much detail about setting up Splunk and index and all that stuff, but I'm going to go more into about this search because there's a lot going on here to make that visualization happen. And I will be covering, the SNMP stuff, how I figured out how to use that SNMP table command, some helpful websites to bring that data in, and how to create that request, and then Splunk's Delta command, the eval command. I'm going to start tearing this search apart and show you at the different sections of what happens to the data, and kind of my process or how I get through building a search, a more complex one. So first things first, let's jump over to the documentation where I can show you all the articles that helped me, even calculate this formula. I went out to a Cisco article from, I think it was like 2005, which I'll have all the links below. So let's get to that documentation. First is net SNMP. This is what is running on my Ubuntu box so I can make those calls. You can come out here and learn a lot about the different commands and even the tables and the OIDs, information to help you understand SNMP data or what's helping me. And there is, descriptions here, understand what this column means when you start running those commands. And then to get more information, you can, there from now, I'll probably do it here in a second. When I'm in there, I'll look at the help inside of the command line. But I found this article that goes over SNMP table, which is a one I was using to bring in, and I discovered that brought in the data like I wanted. And then I started playing with the options to really clean up the data and then make it easier for me to ingest, so I can do comma delimited field extractions. And then the next tab here is that Cisco article where I wanted to calculate the bandwidth utilization using SNMP protocol here. And it actually provided the formula to get that utilization. Now the trick of it was here, I'm looking at the InOctets and the OutOctets, and I needed a difference between two polling cycles. So I go out there and run the command once. I run it a second time. What was the difference in time? What was the difference in the two different InOctet numbers? And then I had to use all of that information and do the math to give my speed. And that's where the delta command comes in play, is when I started searching, how can I do a difference? I know I've used I've used other commands inside of Splunk to give me a difference between two fields, but delta really is what I was looking for. And the delta command allowed me to look at not only, you know, like certain fields, but like underscore time. I looked at that for the two events, and it'll make more sense when I go into the search and start tearing it apart. but I started using the delta command against multiple fields to give me another field to be able to use in that calculation. And then when I was starting to pull apart, or I started to bring in the data, I noticed a problem where I was getting negative numbers that caused my chart to be really far off. And I will show you that as well. And what I found out was there's a wrapping effect that happens. So when in octets and out octets reach a maximum value, it just wraps and goes back to 0. And you can see here I did a Google search and just looked up SNMP Counter32. I'll show you why I looked up Counter32, but I did, and I got this number here that helped me with my, my wrapping issue that I discovered. So, and then last but not least will be the eval function. I can't say enough about the eval command and all of the different ways that you can use it to help transform your data and calculations and just even filter. I use something called MV filter to help me look for the when the data was going into the negative, so then I could pull that out, do a calculation, and then use another eval to either bring that number in or the other number. And yeah, like I said, once I go into the search, hopefully I'll explain it in a way that'll make sense to you as it does to me. And I may not be 100% correct on how any of these commands work, but this is just how my brain works and understands this data. And if somebody wants to correct me, please, I'm always willing to learn more. And then, like I said, that multi MV, I think it's yeah, MV filter down here. There it is. This is the eval function that I use to help with my wrapping effect. So now jump back over to the search and start playing with the search here. Actually, you know what? Let's not go to the search. Let me go and show you, because the first link I showed off was the SNMP stuff. So let me show you how I got the data in, how I created my request before I get into the search. To do that, I am going to jump over my Ubuntu box where I've secured shelled in already, and I've actually went to my ops Splunk forwarder, etc apps SNMP directory, and into the bin folder in that directory. And if I do an ls in here, these are the scripts. If you watch my other video, there's the mem info one, but I could do a more on the iftable, and that's what we're talking about in this video. And here is my script that I run every 60 seconds. And I'm using an SNMP table command. But how did I get to this command with those options to, and what does it look like? And, let me just grab this here. Right click, bam, run it. And this is the output I finally decided on. And you can see it's very clean. I have comma delimited, easy to bring into Splunk, and I could show you that. If you haven't seen my field extraction video, I can kind of go over it real quick. But comma delimited like this, making sure even if there wasn't a value, there would be a comma there, and not a space, but there'll be 2 commas, so hey, I've got fields here, here, here. And let's see, let me do a clear, make it new here. And the way I started out, actually, and I was playing with a little bit earlier, I started, I did an SNMP walk and brought in a lot of information. Then I started going out to the net SNMP site and going, where's my interface data and where's this InOctets? And this is when I did a search on, if I go back to my Splunk web here, and I did that Google search and I found this article and I went, InOctets, where is that at? And I started doing SNMP walks and to understand how to find that data. I came out here and found it here, and I saw iftable, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Get back to the Unix box here, and if I run this SNMP walk, you can see there's a lot of information in here. And if you already know SNMP data, maybe you want to skip along, I don't know. But um, if you don't, this is, like I said, there's a lot of data out here. I didn't want to bring it in like this because I don't really need all of this, but I can use part of it. And that's where the iftable actually really came in handy. Let me go up here and find that command. And I'm going to delete this, and this. Rerun this. And when I did the iftable on this with no options, this is what I was getting. I was getting the header information, and then I was getting, 1 and EM0. You can bring the data into Splunk like this, and I did when I first started running this command. I brought it in something similar to this, and I didn't, I'll sometimes maybe just create a test index and send the data there. So when I'm done with it, I can just delete it and then re-ingest it into the proper index. I mean, there's different ways you can go about doing that, but I brought the data in, started playing with it, and I'm like, I don't like the way it looks. So then that's when I started Googling the the table commands where I showed you the link. Another thing you can do is break the command. So if I come in here and just do a -C, it actually causes a problem and then gives me all the error messages. Yeah, you can do the help and all that, but this is just one way I did it. And then here you can see the -C, and then there's print no column headers, print only the column headers. I did an F as well, so I can print table delimited with strings. So I started out with that, and I had the C, and I just put an F, and you'll, if you don't, if you just do the command without telling what to delimit it by, if you don't give it a comma or something else, it's just going to not work. But now, since I've reran that with the comma in there, it knows to put a comma in between even the headers up there. Now, if you want to leave the headers in each time, you can do that. I decided that I didn't want to do that. I wanted a cleaner look, so that's where I looked at the documentation and saw that capital H, and then it cleaned it up. And this is really nice when you bring it into Splunk. Here, I'll jump back over to Splunk Web, and let me go to that search, and I'm going to delete everything here except for the base. So once I bring in that data, it looks very clean in here. And then I did go, let me go to settings, and I'm going to go to source types. I did go, once the data came in, created a source type around this. So if I type in iftable, and there we go, and I will go into there. Instead of, because when I brought it in, it put everything in one event, all these lines, and I didn't want that. I wanted each new line to be its own event. So that's where I have this in here for a pattern instead of a auto. And I don't remember if, I can't remember if I had actually clicked on every line. I think I mainly, this was the better option, just to come in here and say, hey, every time return new line, separate it out into a new event. And then I believe all the other stuff I left just the default. So cancel. Let me go back to that search. There we go. And then once I got the data in here and I've got it broken up, each line was its own event inside of Splunk. I went here and did event actions, extract fields, and this is where going through and cleaning up the data, organizing the data a little bit, when it comes into Splunk, before it comes into, if you can clean up your log and how you're logging the data. Like I said, I've worked with my script and got the comma delimited and got the extra spaces out of there to make it easy. You come in here and click delimiters and then say comma, and you can see it started already breaking up the data real easy. All I had to do was come in here and rename each field, which that was fun, but I got it done because there's only what, 22 fields. Yep. All right, so let me close this out because I've already got the data over here. Don't need to go into that anymore. I'm going to go back to that Unix box here, and I'm going to do a clear. And then is what I'm going to show is I'm going to back up cd local. We don't ever edit anything in a default folder, but inside of this local folder is my inputs.conf. So I'm going to say inputs.conf, and I'll just show you real quickly. You know, there is my inputs for that scripted input. I give it that source type iftable. Every 60 seconds, collect the data, put it in this index, and call it this. So with that, no, yep, showed you the script, how I kind of process of going through it. Probably took me a lot longer, like hours, probably when I was originally building this all out. But let's jump back over to Splunk Web and uh, start tearing that search apart. All right, so here's that base search, but I want to go back and bring up the search that I had pulled up with all the information. Oh, go to reports, maybe easier to find it that way. And then should open that up in a search. Here we go. So here's the search I built. I'm actually going to remove everything here because I want to go over this Delta command first. This was something new to me, that when I started searching for how am I going to, if I jump up to this article, how am I going to get this formula work? How am I going to get the difference between two poll cycles of the time of the InOctets and OutOctets? And that's where I started looking into this Delta command, and it calculates the difference in activity. So you can come out here and you could probably do some searching and find other people to use this command, and what everything it does and what it means. I'm going to explain how it makes sense to me. Let me come back to the search. So I thought I clicked statistics. Nope, there we go. So what I see here is I organize everything by time, because if you have times out of sync, and it's not going from latest to newest, or I did actually have it on newest to oldest, and it didn't give me the numbers because I want the oldest event first on this table here. And that's going to be, you can see in the very top row here, and that's, I have a delta in octets. I say, hey, look at this field, and then create delta in field. I said, hey, delta, here, I have 3 delta commands. I said octets, in octets, and time, because I want the time difference. Because if I look back at my formula here, I needed in octets plus out octets, and I needed number of seconds, and this little triangle, it represents, instead of I guess them typing out difference, represents the word difference. So we need a difference in octets plus out octets times 8 times 100 divided by, you got to get the difference of the seconds times the IF speed, which I'm collecting IF speed, I'm collecting in octets and everything else. So it was easy once I figured out the delta command. So back to the delta, or back to the search with the delta command. So yeah, in octets, delta in, delta out, time, delta t. If I'm doing a table here for underscore time, I do sort, and I do that first. I sort by time so the delta command can work correctly. The first event here, since it is the latest, it doesn't have the delta out in or the t for time, because it didn't have another event to do the calculation off of. So what this number here and this 60-second number here comes from delta going out, going, okay, here's this, let me subtract from, let me do the subtraction from this and get the difference, or subtraction, get the difference from this one to this one. This number here comes from getting the difference from this event to this event, and so on and so on. So let me back up, and then I started, because when I did this, there's this wrap, eval, wrap out, wrap in. I'm going to actually remove this, because when I first started building this search, I didn't know I had a wrapping problem. Actually, Control Z, I'm going to take out band. Now I'll leave the band in there. It shouldn't mess it up. Let's find out. So I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to rerun this search. And once I bring up the search, and it goes right into the visualization because I have the time chart down here, you can see that all of a sudden I had this huge negative usage. Like, how can I have a negative usage? I should not have a negative usage. And I can, open this up to the last, 24 hours, and I will have multiple negative usages. And I was like, is this normal? I figured out that it wasn't normal. It was just that wrapping that I didn't understand about of the maximum value. So when I was, and I'm going to jump back to the Unix box here, and I'm going to Control C, clear. Let me go find that SNMP walk command. In here, when I started looking in here, I saw this counter32, and I started googling like SNMP, counter wrap. I think that's what it was, and that's where I found this other article. And I, if you just do an SNMP counter32, you see a lot of articles around the counter32 type represents this, and here's the maximum value. When it reaches that decimal, it wraps. So all it's doing is, instead of the number being infinite, it just keeps going on. It gets to a certain point and then it just restarts over, and you have to account for that. And that's where I started using the eval command with the mv filter to help me first. And let me go back to the search. And do I have, yep, there we go. I did a Control Z, brought that information back. So, and I can, if you want, I can delete all of this, and I can delete this, and I can show, it should show, yeah, the table here. And inside of here, if I were to, you can see that number, how it goes up. And that's the maximum number. It never goes above, 42. Yeah, I think it's, what was the number again? Let me go back over here. Yeah, 429 496 7295. You'll never see it go higher than that in my logs. And if I keep looking, like, here is a negative number. There's a negative number for the delta out. So that's what it was doing. It just, the number, when it was looking at this event compared to the previous, the numbers had changed so much that I needed to offset this number. So I'm going to back this up. Let's see, back it up one more time, back it up a second time. There we go. Bring it back in. So that's where I started bringing in, and I created a new field called wrap in because I want to look at the delta in. And I said, hey, MV filter, if go out there and match on the negative number, so the negative. And once you do that, if you find that, call it wrap in. And I do the same thing for wrapping out. I say, hey, MV filter eval statement, go in, go do a match, look in delta out, and pull out all the negative numbers. Once you have that, let's do another eval, and that's right here. And if you want, maybe I can, oops, maybe if I do a shift, maybe this will help out a little bit. Not sure. And yeah, I've got it there. Okay. So yeah, so I go in here with this, creating a field called wrap in, do a MV filter, go in there and look for a match on a negative. And if you go into the multi-value and filter function, the MV filter will go in and, following returns values field email that in.net. It's going in there and say, hey, match on email. Look in the field called email and match on anything.net. So that's where I found how to get this to work. It's just by reading the documentation. So once I do that, I say, hey, eval, let's create a new field called wrap in and add. I take that negative number that I found and add that counter 32 maximum value of 429 496 7295. So once I add that, I create a new field called wrap in and wrap out for the in and outs. And then I go and use another eval and do a band end, create a new field. So bandwidth, so band, I don't like typing too much. So, shorten it up. And I say a coalescence, use this first. If you do not have this, then use the delta n. So from the start, all of my numbers were delta n, but since I do have some negative ones in there, I had to use my MV filter to match it. Then I had to take that negative number, add this, which creates a new field with the new number. And then I'd use this eval to go, hey, use this number first in this event. If there's nothing there, then use this other number. And I've done this before with lookup sheets, IP addresses, or even I'm doing numbers and I need to represent a name. I've done that before where I say, hey, show me if you look in here and you see a number, show that. If you go into a lookup sheet and that number matches something, show me the match. And then once that's all done, I do an eval for that formula that I found inside of the Cisco documentation. So my usage in, and I take my band in number times 8 times 100. I do that mathematic, the math there first, divide it, and I make sure that delta time times speed happens first. So if I go back to this calculation, you can see here, I need this done, and then divide it. So add all this, take it times 8 times 10, and then take the number of seconds times if speed. And if speed, it is in here. So if I'll open up a new search here. And I'm going to copy this top part here, and I'll show you that field is there. And off to the left-hand side here, you can see I have that speed. I just don't have the if in front of it. I just took all of that out on all these fields. But here I do have the speed. So if I go back to this search, there's where that speed is. And I do it for both the usage in and the usage out. Then I do my average and I rename it, and average out and rename it. And I do a span 1 minute. So, you can 1 hour, depends on how often you want that search. You can put on auto, play around with the span and the time chart and see which way it looks best. And then when I rerun the search, this is where I get a nice chart to help me understand my bandwidth utilization in and out. And it was funny because me and one of my kids, we downloaded Diablo 4 to play, and when we both went out to Steam and downloaded it, our utilization for the WAN port actually jumped up to 45-50%. So I can see when I'm downloading big files inside of my home network. Hopefully that's all made sense so far, and how Travis is looking at this. If somebody smarter than me wants to correct anything I've said, please leave it in the comments. I got it to work, via this method. But the next thing I want to do is actually turn this into a dashboard, because right now I've noticed if I come up here and don't actually specify one of the interfaces, it doesn't work, if I remember correctly, or it doesn't work as intended. And yeah, I may play around with that. I don't know. But that's why I actually specify a certain in my base search. I make sure, and that's what description is just the EM0. Because if I go back to the Unix stuff, the Unix and the SNMP walk, you can see right here, if description 1, there's the EM0 right there. But I just, when I created the fields or, did the field extraction, I just followed what was inside of well, not this one, but more of the iftable. Actually, here, what I did do, if I go to cd bin, I didn't include the field names coming into my Splunk, when I index the data. But if I go and do a more on the iftable, at the top, I do comment out the headers for my output, so I can always reference the headers that were, supposed to be there. And that's all I did, is I just took the word if out of the name and just called it, index or description or type and whatnot. I could go back through and rename them all if I really cared, or if I needed to. If you want to be more common information model compliant, sim compliant, you could come in here and call this other stuff. So if you were wanting to use this in something like enterprise security or other solutions, maybe I'd have to come back through and normalize the data, do some aliases or whatnot. But I'm not too worried about that right now. And I'm playing and learning more about SNMP. But what I want to do is actually create, let me go back to Splunk Web. I want to create a dashboard around this data, because I don't want to have to come in here and I've got the search, I've got it saved as a, band in and out. And here, if I go reports and I come down here, I've just got it in and out chart V1. I really probably should call this WAN. But if I create a dashboard, I could easily take, either way, I can create the dashboard from here. I'm going to clean this back up before I click on the create the dashboard. I've got it back to EM0. I'm going to rerun this search, make sure the data is still looking correct down here, and I haven't changed anything since I've been doing this video. And then I'm going to come up here and say save as, and I'm going to create a new dashboard. So let's call it SNMP band utilization. Actually, not band. I'm going to say interface. Yeah. Yeah, SNMP interface utilization. We'll just leave it at that. And then I can go either classic or dashboard studio. I'm going to do dashboard studio. And then I'm going to do absolute so I can, move it around if I really want to. And we're going to say line chart and save the dashboard. Let's view that dashboard. But once I get in here, start playing around with this, because I want to make sure the time range picker is working, because if I come up here and do 60 minutes, let's see if that changes. Nope, didn't change it. So let's click edit. I don't know, product team, if anybody from product team watches this video, I don't know why you put a global time range and it doesn't automatically just, when you create a search from it, doesn't automatically use it. So it's just a question. I may email someone. Anyway, I'm going to come down here, click the crayon, and then say default. I could say input, but I'll just say default because this is going to be my default one. And then apply and close. Save, view. Now, when I say last 4 hours, it should change. There we go. And then let's say 60 minutes. And, make sure that features work before I move on. Hopefully, yeah. And if I do 24 hours, looks good. Let's move on to the next part, which is going to be adding a drop-down menu. Let me click edit. Adding a drop-down menu to include the different interface ports that I have. So I'm going to come up here and click on drop-down. I'm going to use it as a single, not like a multi-select. I just want a single select. So we're going to do a drop-down. And then, what is it I wanted to name it? I think it was, I'm actually looking off screen. I'm not going to hide. I build a lot of this stuff before I do some of these videos just to get some practice. So when I come in here, I sound smoother and be able to get through this data or get through all of these talking points easier. But I am doing a lot of this on the fly, which makes it really fun and interesting. So I'm going to rename this title something like select an interface. And that's one thing I've always, yeah, I watch like Bob Ross. I like watching Bob Ross and how he paints and whatnot. And I learned, or what I understand is he actually will go out there and paint the picture twice, have it off screen, so you always have a reference. And I've actually got that this dashboard pulled up as a reference off to the edge over here. So here is the drop down. I'm going to click on it, and then I need to update the labels over here. So we're going to delete. Well, actually, I'll just rename this one. So we'll get WAN. I need what? How many? I need add new, and 5. Yeah, I've got the WAN and 5-port switch, or switch, whatever, the box. Went out to, years ago, went out there and bought a box off of Amazon, and maybe one of these days I'll upgrade it, but I don't think I'm overusing it, so it still runs fine. And here I'm gonna opt 1, opt 2, the opt 3, although it is disabled right now, and then opt 4 is also disabled. Maybe one of these days I'll enable them. And what value I want. So EM 0. Actually, I'm gonna just copy that. It's funny because when I copy it and put it here, it'll start giving me an error message till I fix it. And I just realized I could have just, well, I realized afterwards that I could have just pasted over part of this and not the whole thing, but you'll get to see me go through here and hear me rambling more. There we go. Now I have this all, and then I need to choose a default value. I'm going to say WAN. Go. That looks, oh, token name. Now you can leave it this if you'd really like to. I'm not, because I want something I can actually easily understand. I mean, you can leave it there and have to find that, but then you have to type that every time you want to use that token inside of another search. And I find it easier to use something like this. Bam, bam, looking good. All right, now, there we go. If I click save, so I can save my work, the search isn't going to update yet. Oh, there's still an all in there. How do I still have an all? Let me go back over here. Oh, WAN. And there we go. So now instead of, I don't know how, I thought okay. Not sure what happened there, but there we go. The all is gone. Now I've got 2 WANs. I am going to, first, I'm going to update, because if you notice, if I click on any of these, nothing's changing. I'm first going to go into the search and go and look at my base search here. You can rename this search if you would like to make it a little bit easier to identify. I could say, interface face underscore search, do something like that. And then I want to come in here, and where it has that, I don't know if I can make that a little bit bigger, if that would help. Inside of here, there we go. I don't know if that really helps, but inside of here, I'm going to say $, and what was that? That was FW port $. So this is my token. You got to wrap it in the $signs. I'm going to click apply and close. I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to click save. I'm going to click view. No, search return. Now I need to figure out why it's coming up with 2 of the WANs. In my reference one, it doesn't come up with 2 WANs. So now I got to figure out why that is coming up. Interesting. I've never had that problem before. But if I, Let me, yeah, let's reload this. Is it still there? Yes, it is. All right. That is something I will have to play with later on and find out why that came up like that. Maybe I need to delete that. Let's choose a new value, WAN, and then save. And then I'm going to do a refresh again. I've never seen that before. So that's a first for me. And then now we can see, let's see, LAN. I can see what my LAN port is doing. I can see what, my computer is actually just on its own port here, so I can see what it's doing. We've got it on the last 60 minutes. I'm actually going to blow this up a little bit easier so you can see that. I'm going to go back to my WAN and let's open up to the last 24 hours so you will still see that little space here. And I built myself a nice little dashboard to go between the different ports, see the activity. There's probably more that we can do with this dashboard, but for this video, I think this is a good stopping point of showing you how to take the data from a script, how to build the script, how to play with the SNMP commands. Not saying this is the only way to bring SNMP data in. I'm just using this data to help me teach, give you new ideas of different Splunk commands and how to bring the data in. There is other options out there for bringing in SNMP data. I've said that multiple times. I'll say it again. But this is just an example. It helped me learn, and that's why I did it this way, to do a more manual process so I really understand or get a better understanding of what SNMP protocol is all about. And then learning the Delta command and how to use it with the algorithm, the formula that Cisco provided, and then eval. Please learn the eval command. There's a lot of things that you can do out there. As always, I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them below. And happy spelunking.